I've had plenty of knocks on my door over the years. Neighbors stopping by to borrow a tool, kids selling cookies, even the occasional delivery left on the porch. But this time was different. This knock had weight to it. It echoed through the hallway like a demand, not a request. The sound made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Something about it told me whoever's out there isn't coming with good intentions. At first I thought about ignoring it. But curiosity, mixed with a hint of worry, got the better of me. I stepped to the window and pulled back the curtain just enough to take a peek. That's when I saw them. 2 men. Black jackets. Big block letters across their chests. Police. My heart skipped. My first thought was, what did I do? You know how your brain starts racing through every possibility? I started thinking maybe it was a mistake. Maybe there was an emergency in the neighborhood. Or maybe they needed information. But the longer I looked, the stranger it seemed. One of the men shifted on his feet, almost impatient, like he wasn't used to standing in the open. His partner scanned the street nervously, eyes darting around as if he didn't want to be seen. And then there was the badge on his belt. Too shiny, too plastic-looking. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Still, I opened the door. Not wide, just enough to step into the frame. "Can I help you, officers?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. The taller one spoke first, voice clipped and authoritative. "We're here on official business. Step outside." No introduction. No explanation. Just a command. That's when my stomach turned. Because here's something most people don't realize. Real police don't talk like that, at least not without cause. They identify themselves. They state their reason. They explain what they're doing there. These guys? They skipped all of that. I stayed put. "What's this about?" I asked. The shorter one leaned in, lowering his voice like he was letting me in on a secret. "You've been violating HOA rules. The association sent us here to handle it. Either you comply, or we'll take action." I nearly laughed, but it came out more as a sharp breath. HOA rules. That's what this was about? Let me pause here for a second, because if you don't live in a neighborhood with an HOA, you might not fully understand the weight of those 3 letters. HOA Homeowners Association. In theory, they're supposed to keep the community nice, orderly, safe. But in practice, well, sometimes they overstep. Sometimes they push too hard. And sometimes they send the wrong kind of people to your door. I knew exactly what was happening. These weren't cops. They were pretenders. And the HOA had either hired them or encouraged them to show up looking the part, thinking they could intimidate me into backing down. But intimidation only works if you let it. I straightened my shoulders and said, "If you're police, then show me some ID. Show me a badge number." The taller one scowled. He clearly wasn't used to being questioned. "Sir, I don't think you want to make this harder on yourself." That line right there was almost like he'd rehearsed it. Before I could answer, I felt movement behind me. My wife had stepped into the hallway. She'd been listening the whole time, her instincts sharper than mine. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even say much. She just walked forward, pulled her wallet from her pocket, flipped it open, held it up. A glint of silver caught the light. Her U.S. Marshal badge. The look on those men's faces. I'll never forget it. Their bravado cracked instantly. Their chests that had been puffed out a moment ago now shrank inward. Their eyes went wide, darting from the badge to each other. And then without a single word, they ran. I mean full-on sprint. Down the driveway, across the street, and gone. Like kids who'd been caught sneaking into a movie theater, the house fell silent again. Just me, my wife, and the echo of those heavy footsteps fading away. I turned to her, still catching my breath. She gave me that calm, steady look, the same one she's given me 100 times before when life throws something crazy our way. And all she said was, "That's why you don't let fear control the story." I've replayed that moment in my head so many times, and every time I come back to the same lesson. Fear is the tool of people who don't have truth on their side. They try to intimidate you, to corner you, to make you doubt yourself. But truth? Truth stands steady. Truth doesn't need a costume or a fake badge. The next day, I called the real local police to report what happened. And you know what? They weren't surprised. They'd heard of similar scams before, posters pretending to be officers to get compliance. What shocked them was the connection to the HOA. That part? They said it was unusual. But me, I wasn't all that shocked. Because if you've ever dealt with an HOA that takes itself too seriously, you know how far they'll go. Sometimes it's about grass length. Sometimes it's about paint color. And sometimes it's about power. Control. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, thinking about what had happened. Thinking about how close I came to being bullied into something just because someone thought a fake badge would scare me. And then I thought about the courage it takes to stand your ground, Evan, when you feel outnumbered. Because here's the truth. We all face fake cops in life. Not always in uniform. Not always on our doorstep. Sometimes they show up as bosses who overreach. Sometimes they're neighbors who gossip. Sometimes they're people who thrive on intimidation instead of honesty. And the only way to beat them is to stand tall. By the time I went to bed, I wasn't scared anymore. I was grateful. Grateful for my wife's courage. Grateful for the reminder that truth always shines brighter than lies. And grateful for the strength to know, no matter what mask intimidation wears, it can't win if you don't give it power. The house was quiet after those men bolted. Too quiet. I could still hear the echo of their boots pounding down the pavement, but inside, it was like time had frozen. My wife closed her wallet, slid the badge back inside, and set it on the counter like it was nothing. Like she hadn't just turned a grown men into frightened shadows running down the street me. I wasn't so calm. My heart was still racing, my hands trembling just enough for me to notice. Adrenaline has a way of lingering, even when the danger's gone. I looked at her, trying to process everything. "What just happened?" I asked, though I already knew. She gave me that steady look again. The one that's equal parts reassuring and matter-of-fact. They weren't who they said they were. And when someone shows up pretending to have authority, the worst thing you can do is let them think you believe it. Her voice was calm, but her words carried weight. I sat down at the kitchen table, still shaken, and as the minutes passed, reality sank in. This wasn't just a random scam. This wasn't some coincidence. This was the HOA stepping way out of line. Think about it. They didn't send a letter. They didn't make a phone call. They didn't even come themselves. They sent fakes. They tried to disguise intimidation as law. And in doing so, they crossed a line I didn't even think was possible. I'll be honest, I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying the moment in my head over and over again. The knock. The fake badges. The tone of their voices when they told me to step outside. And then, of course, the way they scattered the second they realized the woman in my house wasn't just my wife. She was a U.S. Marshal. It's funny how one moment can flip everything upside down. The next morning I made the call. I reported the incident to the real police, told them everything, what they looked like, what they said, how they ran. The officer on the line listened carefully, and when I mentioned the HOA, there was a long pause on the other end. Finally, he said, "That's serious. If you're right about that, they've gone too far. Too far." Those words stuck with me. Later that day, I went to the HOA office. I didn't storm in. I didn't raise my voice. I walked in calm, steady, just like my wife had been the night before. And I asked the question point blank. Why did 2 fake police officers show up at my house last night? You should have seen their faces. A mix of surprise and denial. The president of the association shifted in her chair, tried to smile it off, and said, "We would never send anyone like that. Maybe you're mistaken." Mistaken. I leaned forward, hands on the table. They knew about HOA rules. They said they were here on your behalf. So don't tell me I'm mistaken. The room went quiet. Too quiet. And that's when I realized, whether they admitted it or not, they knew something. I walked out of there without another word. Because arguing with people who hide behind power games is like shouting into the wind. It doesn't matter how loud you are. They'll just wait until you're out of breath. But here's the thing about intimidation. When it's exposed, it loses its teeth. Word travels fast in a neighborhood, and before long, people started talking. Neighbors asked me what happened. At first, I wasn't sure if I should share the details. But then I realized if it happened to me, it could happen to them, so I told the truth. I told them about the knock, about the fake uniforms, about the moment my wife flashed her badge and those men ran like their lives depended on it. And as I told the story, I saw the same thing in every neighbor's eyes. A mix of fear, disbelief, and then relief. Relief that someone had stood up, that someone hadn't let the intimidation work. That's when I realized something important. Courage doesn't just protect you. It protects the people watching. 2. Because here's the truth. When someone tries to use fear as a weapon, they count on silence. They count on people keeping quiet, looking down, pretending it didn't happen. That silence gives them power. But when you shine a light on it, when you tell the story out loud, that's when fear starts to crumble. Days passed. The HOA never admitted their part in what happened, but they never tried anything like it again either. No more strange knocks. No more fake uniforms. No more threats disguised as authority, and yet the lesson stayed with me. I thought about how close I came to giving in, just because 2 men in jackets with the word police told me to. I thought about how easy it is to freeze, to comply, to hand over your power without even realizing it. And I thought about how different the story would have ended if my wife hadn't walked in when she did. That night, sitting at the same kitchen table, I asked her what gave her the courage to step forward. She smiled and said, "It's not courage. It's knowing the truth. They didn't have it. We did. And the truth always wins in the end." Her words hit me deep. Because isn't that the heart of it? The truth doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to wear a costume or pound on your door. It just stands there, steady, unshaken, waiting for the noise to pass. And the noise always passes. So if there's something I want you to take away from this story, it's this. Don't hand over your peace to fear. Don't let someone convince you they have power over you just because they say they do. Question. Stand firm. And remember that the truth, your truth, can't be taken from you. It's not by fake cops, not by loud voices, not by anyone. Every time I look back at that night, I don't just remember the fear. I remember the strength. I remember the way my wife's hand didn't shake when she held up that badge. I remember the way those men ran because deep down, they knew their intimidation was empty the second it was exposed. And I remember the calm that followed the quiet reminder that home is worth protecting. Family is worth protecting. And peace is worth standing up for. So let me leave you with this. If you've ever felt outnumbered, if you've ever felt like someone was trying to scare you into silence, remember this story. Remember the knock on my door, the fake badges, the fear that almost took over. And then remember the moment that fear was crushed not by shouting, not by fighting, but by truth, because you have that power. 2. And if this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own strength, I want to ask you something from the heart. Take a second right now, hit that like button. Subscribe so you can be here for the next story, because I promise you, this isn't the last time I'll share something real with you. And come back, because together, we're building more than just a channel. We're building a community where stories like this remind us of what matters most. Courage and the strength to stand tall, no matter who's knocking. Until next time, stay aware. Stay strong and never forget. Fear only wins if you let it.